Welcome to Youth Talks, brought to you by State of Youth.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to State of Youth Podcast. My name is Christopher Kleynhans, and I'm one of the board members of State of Youth and founding member of an organization called Swim for Change. Today I'm joined with Thomas Hugo.
Hi everyone, my name is Thomas Hugo. I'm a general member of State of Youth and founder of an organization known as Gender and Queer South Africa.
Awesome. So today we're going to be discussing the topic of leadership, right? And that can be an extremely broad topic, and everyone has their own views on it. Everyone has their own ideas. What makes a good leader? What makes a bad leader? What is a leader in general? But this will all be discussed in the podcast today. But mainly what I want to highlight will be from a youth perspective. Thomas is currently 18 years old. I'm 17 years old. And I mean, we are youth. We experience different things in our everyday life as to what adults would experience. So it's going to be all from the youth side of things.
Perspective.
Yeah, from the youth perspective. So
I think our voice is just as important as adult voices.
100%. And I think it's another thing that we need to get to in terms of adults listening to youth and how that can make a good leader. But I think something that could start us off with is, what does being a leader or leadership mean to you?
So to me, a leader, so obviously in different contexts, leadership means different things, but obviously we can have a fundamental definition, as you would call it, leading a cause or a group to better its agenda or better its purpose. And obviously leadership means different things. So you can get good leaders in specific contexts and bad leaders in specific contexts. And leadership fundamentally should be done for the good. You know, you've got people who have committed atrocious human rights violations, but in their context may have been considered as a good leader. But we need to focus on what makes society better and what leadership styles and what leaders are propelling the world forward to allow the youth to take over in the future. And that's really the core of what leadership is to me.
No, definitely.
In a broader aspect.
Yeah. I mean, it's very difficult to narrow down to the point what leadership means. I mean, like you say, it can be so broad, and in one context, someone might think this person's an incredible leader. The person next to them might think it's a horrible leader. So it really is up to the person. But yeah, I think
exactly. We see this in society all the time. I mean, even down to personal biases, discrimination based on class or whatever, the way people have been brought up, it all influences the way we perceive leadership. But ultimately, you need to look at the facts. What has the person done, and how are they taking other people's voices and accounts into their leadership style? Yeah,
no, definitely. And if are they being discriminative? Are they being, are they targeting a certain group? And are they targeting a certain group? Are they setting that group out in the background and forgetting that they exist, and they're only focusing on the minority or the majority, or forgetting the minority even exists in the first place? And I think these are all things that lead up to, what makes a bad leader in the first place. And
exactly,
the first thing that pops in my head when it comes to what makes a bad leader is just, I'm gonna go on a little bit of a tangent on a story now. And in high school,
share it with them.
In high school, how you always get those committees, right? There's always the committees out there. And when you first get your first couple of steps into high school, you see these committees, and the leader of the committees, you're like, I want to be that. That looks cool. And as the years go by, you go through different leaders. They come in, they leave high school, another leader comes into place, and you see the difference between them. And there was one specific leader that I came across in one of these committees that really highlighted the idea of bad leadership for me personally. And the first main thing was this idea of promising something, but not putting any action into what is promised to deliver that promise.
100%. And we see that on all levels.
Exactly.
Clearly from youth right up until high levels.
Yes, they all say these things that be like, no, I'm going to do this, I want to do this, and we can do that, of course, no problem. We can find a way to do it. Maybe next week. Okay, I'll put it in the next meeting agenda. And it just goes on and on, and that just all kind of snowballs. and snowballs into this idea of, now there's this miscommunication. You said one thing, you're doing another thing. And then this whole miscommunication leads to this whole idea of like this unorganized mess and unorganized chaos.
Exactly. And despite it being minuted in this context, I mean, no one actually ends up keeping track. Now you set 4 or 5 meetings later and everyone goes, what was that idea? And it's all because they haven't taken accountability and actually done the things they said.
Accountability.
It's always accountability.
That's
the fundamental of leadership right there.
That completely slipped my mind, is the idea of accountability. When a leader is not accountable, it can lead to so many more problems. It just snowballs from there.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that I was going to possibly speak about later. I mean, accountability is a huge lack of accountability. It's such a huge issue and has caused so many societal flaws. I mean, every single year we see, take for example the climate crisis. Greta Thunberg goes to the UN. They go, oh, what do you have to say to us this year? And it's like the same as last year and the year before. There's no accountability. Who's holding these people accountable to the things that they're going to say?
Exactly.
We heard the same promises since before 2000, and here he sits with nothing.
Yeah, they come across as great ideas and put them forward to get win over the population or whoever their target audience is. But when it comes to actually delivering it, they're not being held accountable for it. And that just snowballs into the bad leadership aspect, whether that be a committee of a high school or a president of a country.
Oh, yeah.
There's not that accountability in place. It becomes so problematic and it builds anger within people.
100%. And it stems right from youth leadership. As you said, high school committees, when you're campaigning to be the head of a society or an organization or committee, everyone goes and speaks the popular talk to get the vote. But then you don't actually know what you're speaking about. You're just saying it. And it's such a, that's another issue I have with leadership, is everything becomes political or to further your cause or your organization or some entity that you're a part of, whereas actually leadership is about the people. It's about what are you doing to further the lives of the people. As I said earlier, about what makes a good leader, you're forwarding the group of people that you're representing as opposed to yourself or your personal agenda. And I think that the leaders of today are being brought up in a world where corruption, nepotism, lack of accountability is so common that, well, I can just say one thing and not actually deliver. I'll get the vote anyway. That mindset is common right down in high schools and clubs, in societies. I mean, we see it all the time.
It's kind of like drilled into us that we have to go and market our campaign, put out there what is going to benefit us. You think, okay, how can I get this position so that it can look good on my CV? Or how can I get that leadership position because it will earn me more money? Or it's never, people often forget the original meaning behind leadership, where you want to, whether it be take charge in the situation, but actually to benefit the people. And we do see that sometimes.
And what my worst thing is with the whole thing is that oftentimes leaders campaign on the selfless idea of, oh, I want to make you better, I want to do this, but the agenda underneath it is it's often so like well-rounded in lies that it's blatantly obvious. When you see come election times, the last 4 years people have been starving, but suddenly South Africa, as an example, is going to be better. Or, the last 10 years with climate crisis, things have been going so, and it hasn't even been considered, but now suddenly we're going to make a change so I can be appointed this position. And, oftentimes people are so blissfully unaware of what's going on.
Yes.
Because we've been brought up in a world where lack of accountability is so common, we go, okay, we're going to focus on one organization and we're going to vote for them, or we're going to appoint them as their leadership. But we're not actually seeing what is really going on behind the scenes because we're so blinded by said promise that, is directed towards us, that we actually don't see the bigger picture. And that, like I said earlier, stems right down to high schools, youth clubs, everything.
And a lot of the time, we're sitting here as youth being kind of, tricked into this idea that what the government's doing or what the leader of this committee is doing or your principal's doing is right, because you don't know any better most of the time. You're just sitting there. If a teacher tells you this, you go, yes, thank you. Process, noted in
Yes,
my brain.
sir. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
You
like,
don't question.
you just go with it. You like accept it and move on. And I think that's where this whole idea of where we've grown up in our, like, in this mindset that adult leadership is the only place where change can be made. You know, you get your president, they're going to make the change, they're adults. You get your principal, they're going to make the change, they're an adult. You want to go somewhere, like, it's always your adult people in your life that will make the decision, or they will be the leaders in the situation. And yes, I'm not saying that adult leadership is useless. It's incredibly useful, but it can become really problematic when the idea of youth leadership is completely disregarded. And I think
100%.
what we need to start realizing is, us as youth, look, we are extremely powerful people as youth. We are a powerful group that can bond so quickly and cause such a movement and become so powerful and actually create this change. And I'm just thinking,
exactly. I mean, we've seen it throughout history as well.
Yeah.
Like youth movements. Take, for example, in apartheid South Africa, youth movements, they were so influential that they literally posed a massive threat to a complete regime. And it shows just how powerful we are, A, when we come together, and B, when we have accountable, responsible leadership in the youth. And I mean, Chris, you're a leader, a very, very responsible one, might I add, as well, and a very influential one as well. So, you know, you've obviously seen accountable leadership, and the flip side of the coin, the one that we were talking about earlier, lack of accountability as well.
Yeah, I mean,
and
it's always that idea of adults this, adults that. If you're the youth and you see a problem, you step aside and you're like, there's nothing I can do. And that's the Weta Uprising example is a brilliant one, because it was youth standing up for something and becoming the leaders, for standing up something that they believe was right, which is incredible to see and was so needed. And caused such a snowball of effects that happened later in the like timeline of apartheid. And you know, I'm just thinking now, it kind of leads into the next question of the idea of what is the problem when adults kind of disregard the idea of youth leadership?
Oh, 100%. I mean, disregarding the youth is to disregard your future.
Yeah.
You know, like right now, I mean, South Africa is in a very tense political climate, as we've seen in the last few days, with mass civil unrest. That's got many layers to it. I mean, I don't think that we can really truly unpack what has been unfolding in the country in the last few days. But what I found interesting is that because elections are coming up, as well as, you know, this mass unrest has really shook the nation, political parties are using this to further their own agenda, as opposed to really caring for the needs of the people. And that's what I was meaning earlier when I was saying, oh no, it becomes dangerous when people are, you know, talking the talk to the people, but to further their own goals of their own organizations. We see political parties going into areas that have been affected by the unrest and are chanting their political name instead of the common South African name and that of the needs of the people. And it becomes, and it's incredible to see that they're doing this around election time, especially when so many more voters are going to be voting now, because so many people have turned 18, so many more people have the power to vote now, and have seen so much change in South Africa and the world at large. And we are, I would argue, Gen Z is quite an informed generation, if I could call it that. We're not opposed to change. In fact, we promote it. So it's quite interesting to see how political parties are really like grabbing onto this moment. And to undermine the youth ideas, it's a very bad idea to undermine youth ideas, because as you've seen, I mean, take it back to last year with Donald Trump and the whole rallying. Was it that last year? Yeah. Gosh,
Yeah, it
it
was
was like a
2020.
lifetime ago.
Yeah.
You know, the whole TikTok saga when Youth made his rally sold out and then no
Yeah.
one actually turned up. Power of Gen Z, so immense. You can judge to the president, the former president rather. Undermine the youth is to undermine your future.
No, exactly. I love what you were saying there about they mustn't undermine the youth, because
Yeah.
like I said earlier, like you say there with that example of with the elections coming up, there's a whole bunch of youth now that's available to vote, and those votes play a drastic role. And when you're looking at the power of the youth had with TikTok to literally buy out a whole presidential campaign,
whole presidential campaign.
It's incredible to think that the youth have that power, and I feel often either adults are scared of that and they want to completely avoid it, or they're not aware of it, or they don't know how to approach it. And there's this group in South Africa, in the Western Cape focused, called the Commissioner for Children. Her name is Christina Nomdu. She is the Commissioner for Children, but she has a group that we are the government monitors, right? And what we do is we have these weekly meetings where we discuss certain topics, and all the government monitors are under the age of 18, and we're youth.
Yeah.
And we sit with the Commissioner for Children, an adult, and we discuss the issues that are going on. And we sit together, we discuss these issues, we format them in write-ups, we format them in poetry, format them in pictures, and we, graphics, and put them on our social media. We give them forth to, provincial parliament, national parliament, eventually to lead forward where, they've started to realize that the youth have such an insight that they didn't realize yet. And they're starting to notice the power we have, to where we even got brought into the first ever closed parliament session that youth were present in the history of South Africa. It's incredible to see how youth are growing. And I think it's just a great example to see that the youth need to be joined in with this whole idea of adult leadership. It can't be disregarded anymore. The youth aren't going to stand by and let adults disregard them anymore. I mean, we've seen
And just because the voting age is 18 doesn't mean that everyone under 18 suddenly doesn't have valid opinions, ideas, and beliefs. I mean, growing up, you see people going to parliament fighting every single day. It's televised on national TV, broadcast on radio. You're exposed to it all the time, especially in South Africa, where you've got so many political parties intended, ironically, to ensure accountability in leadership. But there is no accountability, and the youth have been exposed to it. But just because we're not 18 doesn't mean that we don't have the power to change everything.
Exactly.
I mean, SRC, student groups, student movements, they are all so influential. And like you said, it's growing in popularity in South Africa, and as it should be growing in popularity in South Africa.
And I mean, look, you and I both know, having startups and growing the organization, how exciting it is. And tedious and exciting and draining and tiring and frustrating and everything it is to grow forward with these organizations. But because they are both youth-led and run by the youth organizations, is that we've seen firsthand that the youth are keen to buy in. But the problem that lies is that adults have, and I say this when, stereotypically generalizingly speaking, is that adults have brainwashed us in this way of, like we said earlier, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, we so, put into this mindset that it's difficult for us to lean in towards, following a youth leader. You're like, what on earth are you doing? You must be kidding me.
Exactly.
Is there a youth leading me here? And I think that's where it lies in this whole idea of education, and that we need to educate the youth on this idea, like you said, accountability. Why is this leader a bad leader? What is this leader doing? And I think there's organizations out there like the CRAM in the United States that's kind of gone worldwide, where they're putting news articles out there that's easy for youth to read, whether it be through a TikTok, through a thread on Instagram, and just running by. Educating the youth so we're not oblivious to what's going on and going around in the world. So we know what's up to date, you know, whether it be State of Youth as well. They're putting platforms available with kids' rights to put us in the picture because they know we're powerful. They know we have this capability within us to do great things.
And that's exactly why they want to keep that mentality of yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. But youth should be voicing their opinions. And what amazes me is that whenever like a young activist speaks out, they always say, oh, the brave X, Y, and Z is speaking out for this cause. And it's like, well, why shouldn't the youth be speaking out against this cause? They are two citizens of the earth. They are two stepping into a world where it's going to directly affect them. And the mentality of yes, ma'am, no, ma'am is not only detrimental to the youth, but adults as well, because youth ideas are valid and extremely important.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you know, now that we understand the fact that youth leadership needs to be a real thing, it mustn't just be swept to the side. But still, the biggest problem that lies ahead of us is how are we going to get that adult leader or that adult leadership or adults in general to listen to the youth. And there's this thing that I go by, and I actually got taught it in one of the summits I attended for We Are Family Foundation in 2020 actually. And we got told this idea, and it was on this diagram, right? And you kind of got to picture a semicircle. And the semicircle is kind of cut into 4 sections, right? On your far right-hand side, you have that people that honestly, no matter what you are saying, you will not change their mindset. In this case, they're going to be believing that youth should stay youth, say yes, ma'am, no, sir, yes, sir. You know, those are their languages. They think that that's where it should stay. Then on the complete other side, yes. And then on the complete other side, you get people that are for it. On the left-hand side of the circle, the semicircle, you have people that are like all for it. They love the idea of youth leadership. They'll work with you, and they'll go with you. Now, in between those two, you get people that are still unsure, and they're like, yeah, I kind of like this idea, but I'm not sold yet. And then you get the people that are like, I think it's a bad idea, but maybe I can change my mind. Those two people is where you need to focus your time on. Don't waste your time on trying to convince the adults that are stuck in their ways. Spend your time focusing your energy and putting your energy towards people that can be shifted towards that. I'm all for this idea of youth leadership with the adult leadership. Because once you get them, your ideology will grow and the strength will grow in numbers to this idea of youth leadership. And this is not just talking in youth specifically. If some kid in the other side of the world wants to do this and they start doing that in their community, we start doing it in our communities. Someone 100 kilometers down the road does it in their community. We will start growing this idea of youth leadership around the world.
This huge network,
Exactly. And it will just kind of grow and grow and grow and grow and grow till we see this connection and kind of growth between the two, that the two collide in a nice, peaceful way of this cohesive adult and youth leadership platform.
Exactly. And that's why, you know, social media is so important, as we saw with TikTok and with all of those other apps joining with Donald Trump. But that's why organizations such as State of Youth are so important, because I found out about State of Youth via an Instagram advert, funny enough, and I immediately went onto their website and I saw all of the range of available resources and talks and sessions, etc. available, and I was awestruck by it. And to have that net and cohesive network of youth voices around the world, it makes it incredibly influential. And I think what you said about finding that, focusing your energy at that middle ground, that middle 2 slices of the semicircle, is vitally important, because we always hear the idea that your opinion may not change a general group's opinion, right? That your voice may not actively do it. But all it takes is for you to change that one person in there that is similar minded to you, and they will change the rest of the group's idea. I mean, we see this in terms of patriarchy and, you know, everything that we find in South Africa in terms of rape culture, etc., how men need to talk to other men to change their mindsets. We see it all the time with young youth activists talking to those in high positions about climate change, how they need to influence other leaders to do it. And I think the most important thing is claiming your space in that network. You're going to meet resistance no matter where you go, no matter how just and good your cause is. There's always going to be someone meeting you with resistance, because A, your opinions differ, and secondly, if you are of a younger generation, it's going to become an age thing, because 99% of the time it's because of your age and you speaking up that they will belittle you, because youth don't have a voice, or they shouldn't. You haven't been alive long enough to know what's going on, but you've been alive long enough to observe what is going on, so you know what has happened. You know.
I love what
you've lived your life in that system.
You've experienced it from a completely different view, because the world is forever changing, right? It changes every day. And
exactly,
when that specific adult leader was our age, or any youth age for that matter, things were completely different to what they are now.
Oh, exactly.
And that's where, another thing is that the youth aren't coming from this, we think we're better, we're attacking you point of view. We're coming from that, we just want to share our opinion, please listen to us.
Facts.
And
we get shut down constantly for just trying to have a voice.
And that's where that anger builds up. But like you said, we got to claim our space.
There comes a time where you have to, A, stop listening to what they're saying to you about putting you down or whatever. And secondly, there has to be a time where you come to terms with yourself and you say, no, my voice is important.
Yes.
And my voice needs to be heard. And this cause needs to be fought for. And another great tip of advice from my side is speaking to those like-minded adults on the far left to really push your ideas as well.
Yes.
Because once they start pushing your ideas, it creates that domino effect, that spillage into adult groups and change maker groups, and your voice will suddenly become
spreads.
Yeah. Claiming your space in whatever cause you're fighting for is up to you, but it is also important that you believe in yourself to do it.
Yes. And I just want to highlight that, because I was going to bring it back towards something you said earlier, but you said it there, is to believe in yourself. And I want to bring in a personal side of things to this. And, when I started off, I was no clue where I was heading. I knew something that needed to be changed. I wanted to change something. And, I think I can speak for you as well, that we don't know where things are heading, when you start up.
Yeah.
It
changes all the time.
Yeah. And you got to just believe in yourself firstly. Yes, that's the first thing. If you're not going to believe in yourself, it's not going to work. And I know it sounds harsh, but you have to believe in yourself. That has to be the first step. But the next step is listen to other people's stories, because you're not by yourself in the situation. There are so many other people out there that are going through the same things. When I was starting up in now I have to think back. I want to say
16, 17.
No, that was the year when we started the organization. And then a couple years later, and I can't remember the date. I think it was around 2018 or 2019. I think it was 2018 or 2017. You know what? Dates don't matter. It was the International Children's Peace Prize award ceremony that was held in South Africa. So it was a special one. And I was there sitting at the back. It was in, the hall in town, in Cape Town CBD. There's a city hall there, and it was held there. And I remember sitting at the back, and these were like
massive
celebrities.
Hall also.
Yeah, it was a massive hall. This picture, this massive hall. It's like fancy. They have the whole orchestra playing on stage. Everyone was in suits, and it was fancy. I was walking into what I thought was like the Met Gala for me. I was in awe. These were my celebrities. And it was the year that March for Our Lives had won the International Children's Peace Prize for Kids' Rights Foundation. And I sat at the back of that hall, and I was so moved, by, the speeches that was going on, Desmond Tutu was there. He was dancing. It was a whole vibe. Everything was incredible, and it was an honor to be there. And I went with a part of the Katie campaign with Katie Mycroft, one of the International Peace Prize winners. And some things I remember distinctly from that night. One of the other International Peace Prize winners, Abraham, also gave a speech. And I remember it was during his speech that I was like, no, I'm sorry. These are my celebrities. I'm going to faint. I need to get things done. This is my time to change the world. I love what these people do. And that was my motivation. And that links me straight back to the idea that you got to listen to other people's stories, got to listen to people's advice. After that session, once the ceremony had ended, we were lucky enough to go to where the tea and everything was afterwards, and I got to speak to some of the Peace Prize winners. And I could tell you the amount of photos I took. I was still in awe. I still am in awe.
There's a whole hard drive.
Exactly. I'm working with them, on the State of Youth board, and I'm still in awe to be working with such incredible people. But the thing is that the point I'm trying to prove is that it all starts with listening to other people's stories, believing in yourself, and listen to their stories, but don't compare yourself to them. As soon as you start comparing yourself to so-called better leaders in the world, you're going to start feeling that what you do is not good enough. If you're going to compare yourself to, Nelson Mandela, for example, you're going to look, so-called like you're not doing anything. But you got to compare yourself to yourself. You got to realize these are my circumstances. These are the resources I have available. What can I do in my situation? If you can only do one thing, that is incredible. You have done that one thing. That is one step closer. You must forget about these giant, you got to forget about these giant leaps of faith to your goal. You got to do little baby steps, and these baby steps will accumulate so quickly that you'll get to places you never even imagined. And I think that's where it lies, that youth are so powerful.
No, exactly. And even, you say comparing yourself to other leaders. And, for me, my passion, my activism is centered around gender-based violence and patriarchy and rape culture and all of that. And as a man, I'm in a position of privilege. So I can't relate to the struggles that women and other genders face with regards to patriarchy, rape culture, etc. But I know that because I'm in a position of privilege, I have the power to make a change. And I've had protests where I have had two people rock up. And we've stood on the side of Main Road with a sign trying to spread awareness. And you think, you standing there and you're going, I'm one of two people standing on a busy road, not doing anything. What is this doing? But the power it has is so immense, because as people drive by, they hoot at you. They have comments to make. So most of the, thankfully for me, it was mostly positive, but I've had resistance before. I've had people shout names at me, like, you don't know what you're doing. And, they think that my sign saying end femicide now is attacking them. And the next thing I get home and I look on Facebook, and people have taken photos of me that I didn't even know they were there. Yeah. And it has spread so much. And that message I'm standing there thinking it's just me standing on the road, and it had spread everywhere. And so don't underestimate yourself and don't compare yourself to other people, because we see women's rights activists on global scales doing these amazing things. But start in your community, start with what you have. Even if it's just a cardboard sign, it has the power to get conversations started, to evoke emotion in people. Your cardboard sign's amazing. You've used it in so many things. And I know you've also been in a similar situation as me, when you've held a protest and you've been like either the only one or one or two people that might have joined.
Firstly, before I get too sidetracked, what you were saying there is that first step into leadership that you took.
Yeah.
You saw a problem, you led your way to a solution. You're starting
Take
to
that
work.
initiative.
You took that initiative and became a leader, and that's where it starts. And, you know, for me, going back, my sign, the sign that Thomas was speaking of, I have this big cardboard sign, and it says, I can't remember word for word, but it's, if I remember correctly, it should be, "Dear Mr. President, we won't hurt you, we just want to talk." And I did a couple of protests with it. One of which there was a in 2010, South Africa held the Soccer World Cup, and there's a fan walk bridge in the Cape Town city centre. And I went there and I tied ribbons on the fan walk bridge, you know, black ribbons for suicide awareness, you know, and green ribbons for mental health awareness. And, you know, a couple of weeks ago before that protest, someone had died by suicide off that bridge. And that became, you know, quite a big news article. And that's where it came to realize, you know, okay, enough is enough, you know. And we went there and we tried to create awareness. The conversations we built off that day just by holding that cardboard sign. Yes, it was only me that rocked up there. But people came and joined. People came and asked me what I was doing. People came and sat with me. I even had, at one stage, I had someone who was living on the streets come and sit with me, talking to me about, you know, how tough it is, you know, for people living on the streets when it comes to their mental health. And, you know, later the conversation ended with him telling me he needs to go make rubber bullets for the army and running off. So it was a very strange conversation. But the idea is that you don't stop there. And I went back.
Oh, yeah.
And I did it again. On Mental Health Awareness Day, I went back. I tied more ribbons. I got mugged. We move on. We didn't stop there. It grows. And the idea to show you here is that you may have days where you bounce back, where you think, I am not doing this again. Or I went there, I was the only one that showed up. Not a chance by doing this again. That was embarrassing. No, if you impacted one person's life, that's a whole
and that one person's
being.
enough.
Yes,
100%.
exactly. It's a whole life.
And on your point about, you know, having stories and stuff, I was doing a similar one as well, and I was standing on the side of the road. This time I was in Wynberg area, and I'm standing by the Wynberg Magistrates Court where convicted rapists and sexual assault perpetrators are going in and out almost, you know, every single hour because the problem is so big in the country. And I'm standing there on the side of the road with a list of names of women who have fallen victims and a sign saying femicide and all the rest. And I've had a man come up to me, no idea who he was. He crossed the street to come to me. And we sat and we had a half an hour conversation about how difficult it is for men to open up about their experiences. And we had this really thoughtful conversation. I've never seen him. I don't know his name. And in the end, we came, you know, both of us felt so inspired by each other's conversations. And I was standing there going, I'm, you know, one of three people here. That's this time I had a bigger turnout. I did not have two people. I had three people. Can you believe it?
Growth.
You know, growth. And here I'm standing, and both of our lives have been changed by this interaction. And it was such an awe-inspiring moment, because here is this person, I have no idea who he is, but we've had a very groundbreaking conversation just around what you're doing. And both of us walked away from that conversation having grown as people.
Yeah.
And, you know, we were both inspired to do something about it. And another point I wanted to bring to what we were saying about, you know, just starting somewhere, you know, doesn't matter if you're the only person. Action doesn't necessarily mean standing on the road, chanting whatever it is with a cardboard sign or signing petitions. Change and leadership takes forms in other ways as well. Think of your talents. My personal talent is drama. And so earlier this year, I directed a Shakespeare show for the Artscape Theatre, and my show was Othello.
So
Now,
just
if you're
to
familiar
interrupt quickly, the Artscape Theatre is a really big theatre in Cape Town.
in Cape Town, yes.
That's very well known.
Sorry, I should have clarified. But it was part of an international festival called the Shakespeare Schools Festival. It's in a few countries around the world, and basically in it you perform abridged versions of a show. And because I was directing a gender and actors playing their assigned sex at birth, wasn't really a factor in casting choices for me. So my Othello was played by a woman, a young girl, and my Desdemona was played by a young male. But they were both playing the opposite sex, as it were, in the show. Okay? And I didn't think much of it, because to me that's normal. Well, because of the context of the show, it deals with heavy themes such as gender-based violence. And as I mentioned earlier, South Africa's got a huge issue with gender-based violence. This casting choice, this little thing that I, was intending to cast the right people, and through working on it, I realized the impact that it had, especially in the heavy climactic scenes. It caught attention of local radio and TV stations, as well as the BBC, and this message of gender-based violence suddenly got out to the rest of the world. And leading from my talent of drama suddenly got out to the rest of the world, and conversations were taking place about it. So in your talented space, in your comfortable space, be it you are a rugby player, a basketball player, you enjoy singing, and you're passionate about something, incorporate that into what you're doing. If you are a sportsman, play with the colors of your cause, as an example. If you are a singer, write a song about your cause. You don't need to be standing on the side of the road with a big placard and chanting things. You can take it and personalize it into your talents.
No, definitely. And I think it's just so beautiful what you said there, is the idea of find what you enjoy, find what you're good at, and put that in the work that you do. Because you don't want to be doing work that is an effort to you. You're not going to go very far. You need to find something that you can drive, but at the same time, what you're doing will drive you. And before we end off, I just really want to highlight the idea that, yes, in the world, the world is majority run by adult leadership. But that doesn't mean the youth can't lead. The youth are powerful. Each individual out there has the capability to do incredible things. Adults out there, this doesn't mean we just want you away. We want you to work with us. We want to work with you. We want to join in this cohesive group to lead to a better future. And Thomas, thank you so much for joining in on the conversation today. I really, really enjoyed it myself.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. And thank you, State of Youth, for allowing us this platform to speak on. And thank you for listening to the State of Youth podcast. And join us next time for a new episode. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.